The signs are ready and placed in front of the main door. I spent the majority of the past 2 days making them because I want them to be perfect. Now comes the challenging part: climbing the stairs, entering the master bedroom, tearing off the sheets, ripping half of the king-size mattress off the bed, and carrying it halfway down the stairs, through the hallway, out the front door, and placing it on the grass in front of the road. Back inside, up the stairs, throwing the sheets down the stairs, taking it outside, and tossing it onto a pile next to the mattress. Glancing at the clock, it's 4:22. I have to hurry. I need to finish before 5 o'clock. Next, I disassemble and take out the dining table, light enough for me to carry up and down, turning it sideways and facing it towards the door, placing it next to the bed in the yard. The last item is a 6x8 rug in the living room. I roll it up and place it next to the other items in the yard. Installing the signs and proudly realizing it's only 4:55, 10 minutes before my wife returns. I step out into the middle of the road and look back at my work. It looks so beautiful that it almost brings tears to my eyes. My wife's bed and our marital bed, the dining table and the rug. 3 places where I'm sure my wife and her lover have engaged in sexual activities many times over the past 6 months. The signs are positioned at just the right height to be within reach, and each sign I read has a 17x24 picture of the adulterous couple, illustrating their actions on each corresponding piece of furniture. The 5th sign, hanging behind the red dining table, states that my wife's lover is her boss, Greg Allen of Mitchell Price and Allen Realty. He's married and has 3 children. I don't think his wife knows about this, but she will soon. At exactly 4:57, she's due home any time now. I turn around and notice a group of neighbors gathering to see what I'm doing. Some cars have stopped, and some people are talking on their cell phones, either calling friends to come watch or calling the police to arrest me for publicly stimulating sexual activity. I waved lightly to the crowd and stepped into the house, closing the door behind me. Precisely at 5:05 p.m., I saw my wife's car turning the corner at the end of the street, immediately slowing down as she noticed people gathering outside our house, looking at something on the lawn and chatting, laughing with each other. She drove slowly to the house we had shared for the past 10 years, standing in front of it, gazing at the belongings and signs on our front yard. Surely, she paid particular attention to the large pictures of her and her boss, Greg Allen, even as she looked through the windows of her car and our house. In the midst of the murmuring voices of 40 or 50 people standing around, watching and observing, I heard her scream, "No! Oh my God! No!" Finally, her gaze shifted from the signs to the front window of the house, where she saw me. We locked eyes. She looked anguished, her face as pale as dust, and tears streaming down her cheeks, as if she were asking me why. I also had a similar question for her. I observed her for a few seconds, then turned away and pulled the curtain behind me. I thought I should explain how my wife, Sherry, and I ended up in this tragic situation. My name is Jack Meyer. I met Sherry during my first year of college. A mutual friend suggested that we meet, and when we first met, I was struck by love at first sight. Sherry wasn't a classic beauty, but she was truly adorable and charming, standing at 5 feet 2 inches with beautiful blue eyes and long blonde hair. Her petite body was perfectly proportioned, with a full bust and an attractive slim waist that captivated me. Although she didn't know it at the time, I had decided, and the thought of not winning her had never crossed my mind. Sherry and I started dating, and after only a few weeks, we became a couple. A month after we met, we had sex for the first time, and it was something entirely new to me. I was obsessed with Sherry and couldn't get enough of her body. Both of us were not virgins, but our experiences were limited, and we were fascinated with each other's bodies. I think it's safe to say we fell deeply in love. We got married right after college and moved into our first apartment in Van Nuys. Sherry earned a real estate broker's license, and worked for one of the most renowned brokerage firms in the area. I used my engineering degree to secure a good position at an electronics company, and we settled into what I thought was the perfect life. For the next 13 years, we lived a wonderful life together. First in our apartment and later, as our income increased, we bought our dream house and expanded our family. First came Shelby, now 8 years old, and 2 years later, Ryan, now 6 years old. Sherry and I loved these children beyond words. We lived for each other and for our family. But what happened? It's regrettable. I can't say. I wish I could. I didn't notice the small signs that something was wrong, but I didn't act on them. I was completely blinded and calm, living in a world of love and absolute trust for my wife. Until a fortunate accident happened and jolted me awake. An accident involving our daughter Shelby falling ill at school. It was a Thursday around noon. The school nurse called me and said that Shelby was sick, like with a cold. At the time, I was in the middle of a team meeting and had asked the school nurse to call my wife. She said she had tried calling Sherry at her office, where she was supposed to be for most of the day. She had also called our home, but no one answered, so she left a message on her cell phone. It was crucial that I bring our daughter home as soon as possible. I apologized to my colleagues and quickly drove to Shelby's school, where I picked her up and drove her home. As we arrived and I opened the garage door, I was surprised to see an unfamiliar car parked in my spot, right next to my wife's car. At that moment, a lump in my throat and a twisting in my stomach hit me. No, this can't be happening, I told myself. My wife, whom I loved more than life itself, couldn't have an extramarital affair. It was impossible. But how could there be a strange car in the garage? Something was very wrong, and I had to find out. And I couldn't let my daughter know. Stay in the car for a moment, Shelby. But why? She asked. I want to sleep, she replied. I know, but I think there's an exterminator at home, spraying insecticides, and the chemicals might make you sick. Let me check first, and then I'll come get you, Shelby. She grumbled a bit more, but lay back in the back seat, waiting for me. I opened the kitchen door as quietly as possible, hoping to find my wife and a friend sitting, having coffee, and chatting at the dining table. But as I turned the corner, the kitchen was empty. I walked through the kitchen and into the living room, hoping to see her sitting on the sofa talking, but no one was there either. At that moment, I heard her laughter, the cheerful laughter of a girl I knew very well, coming from above, and my heart sank. The rooms upstairs were bedrooms. It made my knees weak, but I forced myself to move forward. No matter how terrible it was, I had to know. I ascended the stairs gently, the carpet muffling my footsteps. The first bedroom was my daughter's. The door open, and upon looking in, I found the room empty, the bed neatly made. The second door led to my son's room, closed. I began to open it, and then I heard my wife's laughter again, coming from the end of the hallway, from the master bedroom. My heart felt like it froze in my throat. I edged toward the door and listened. At first, I heard nothing. Then I heard the sound of the bed gently rocking against the wall, and then the voice of my wife. Oh my God, Greg, it's amazing. Oh yes, just like that. Baby, be my man. Then the voice of a man. It's incredible, isn't it, Sherry? I know it's fantastic, the best it's ever been. I've told you 1,000 times, even criticized Jack, that weak guy. Please don't call Jack weak, Greg, he's not like that. He just can't make me feel the way you make me feel. He loves her so much and tries so hard, but every time he has sex with her, all I can think about is him being inside her, making her complete in a way that no one else can. My body feels like ice. My beloved wife can't endure the way I have sex with her. I needed to see the evidence with my own eyes, but at the same time, I didn't want them to see me. I realized that my marriage was over, but I still needed visual proof of her affair. My heart shattered, and slowly I opened the door a fraction, just enough to peer inside, and what I saw killed every ounce of love I had ever felt for my beloved wife. I realized the man standing next to her was her boss, Greg Allen, the first person I wanted to rush in and punch, but I realized I would end up in jail. After all, he didn't rape my wife. She willingly and eagerly gave herself to him. Nevertheless, I managed to get back to the car, lower the garage door, and pull out onto the street. "Dad, where are we going? I feel uncomfortable, want to go to sleep." "I know, Shelby, but Dad is right. What's happening inside the house will make you feel sicker. I've only been inside for a few minutes, and I don't feel well, so I'll take you to Grandma's for a few hours until the smell dissipates." It took 15 minutes to get to my mother's house, and as I drove, my mind was completely chaotic. My marriage had ended without any hope of redemption. With no other option, I would stay with the woman I had just seen a few minutes ago, engaging in an affair with her lover on my bed. Damn it, I gripped the steering wheel tightly, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Dad, what's wrong?" "It's okay, Shelby. Dad's fine. Don't worry, Dad's fine." I left Shelby with my mother, telling her that I would come to pick her up in a few hours. I explained nothing to my mother about what I had witnessed, just asking her to keep an eye on Shelby until I returned from work. I felt the urge to go back home and confront the betraying couple, but I decided I needed more than just a confrontation. I needed revenge, and as I returned to my office, I began to formulate a plan to destroy my wife and her boss. The electronics company I worked for had various departments, and as I entered my office, I asked my secretary to ensure that no one disturbed me for the rest of the day. Then I picked up the phone and called my colleague in the security department, Dan Taylor, an excellent engineer and a good friend from college. I told him I needed to see him immediately, and he said he would be there in half an hour. He arrived after 20 minutes of the phone call. "What's up, Jack?" "Come in, Dan, and close the door." "Hello, you look like you just lost your best friend." "I think so, and I need your help." "What's going on, Jack?" "I just caught my wife and her boss having sex in my house on my bed." "Damn it, Jack, are you kidding?" "I wish I could say that. I have to pick up my daughter from school, and when I got home, there was a strange car parked in my garage. I sneaked in and found them in our bedroom, on our bed. I can't believe it, but that's the truth. Damn it, Jack, this shouldn't happen to anyone. My daughter is sick, and I can't risk her seeing them, so I left her waiting in the car. After I saw them together, I left quietly and took Shelby to my mother's house. What will you do next? I'm not sure, but I know I need evidence. I need audio and visual proof of them doing this again. And that's where you come in. I need hidden security cameras and discrete microphones that I can place in several rooms in the house to record everything. I think I can help you with this, Jack, but how? How do you know when the next time will be? It might be a one-time thing when everything gets out of control. No chance, Dan. They mention doing this regularly for the past 6 months. I don't know if they always come to my house, but I'm betting they have. Hotels leave traces they can't afford, and his wife stays at home all day. So only my house is an option when I'm at work and the kids are at school. We talked more, and then we began to execute the plan. Dan said he had access to the latest security cameras and discrete microphones that would work with my laptop or home computer. He also had a small voice recorder I could place under Sherry's car seat to capture any conversations she might have while driving. This would only record her side of the conversation, but it was better than nothing. I thanked him and said I would come to pick everything up from his office the next day. Going back home that night was the hardest thing I've ever done. I didn't know if I could face my wife and act like nothing had happened. I decided the best thing I could do was make Sherry think I was feeling unwell, which was actually true. I picked up Shelby from my mother's house, and when I got home, Sherry was in the kitchen cooking. When she saw Shelby with me, she became frantic. "Where have you been, and why didn't you call me and tell me Shelby was sick?" "I just got a message from the school nurse on my answering machine. The school tried to call you, Sherry, but for some reason, you couldn't answer." They called your office and were told you weren't there. Then they tried calling your home phone and left a message. They also called your mobile, but it went straight to voicemail. Oh my God, I might have accidentally turned it off when I was setting it at home. I've been so busy all day and didn't have a moment for myself. Yes, I get it. I've been too busy to care about our daughter. Sherry hugged Shelby and apologized, then helped her into bed. My wife may be unfaithful, but she genuinely loves our children. I seem to be just an obstacle to her happiness, and that's about to change very soon. Sherry tucked our daughter into bed and returned to the kitchen to make some soup and finish dinner for us. I don't feel very well either, I told her. I think I'll sleep in the living room tonight, just in case I'm contagious. Sherry placed her hand on my forehead. You look sweaty, and you seem pale. Yeah, I think so. Pale and sweaty. That's what happens when you catch your wife with another man in your bed. I didn't respond to her, just turned and walked up the stairs. I entered the master bedroom first. Honestly, I didn't want to step in there. But I needed my shaving kit, toothbrush, and work clothes for the next day, so I forced myself to enter the room. The window was open, the scent of sex had dissipated, and the bed was neatly made. She must have changed the bed sheets. This tore at my heart as I observed it. Anger surged within me like a wave, but I restrained it. I had to keep calm until I could unleash hell upon them. And I would, of course. I gathered my belongings and moved into the living room, closing the door behind me. I undressed, leaving only my underwear, and lay down on the bed. My body felt stiff. I wanted to cry, but I forced myself to hold back. I had a mission to complete, and I couldn't let my emotions get in the way. In a few hours, I lay in the darkness, sleep avoiding me. My wife entered the room after feeding and putting the kids to bed. I pretended to be asleep. She lightly touched my forehead with her hand and left the room, closing the door behind her. Sherry usually took the kids to school, so I woke up early, showered, and left the house before she woke up. Honestly, I didn't care about what she thought at this point. I just wanted to get away from what until yesterday I considered a perfect marriage based on loyalty, honesty, and a lifelong commitment. I was blinded how heartbroken I was. I arrived at work before anyone else, made coffee, and started organizing my plans. I knew I had to cancel the joint credit card, transfer half the money in the joint account and savings to another bank, only in my name. The will, life insurance, and beneficiaries in the 401 plan also needed to be changed, removing Sherry and naming only Shelby and Ryan. It seemed like too little to do to unravel 13 years of my life. It had to be harder and deeper than I thought. And at some point, I would experience that. I also knew I needed to find a good divorce lawyer to try to prevent Sherry from hurting me. This is a no-fault divorce state, so the charge of infidelity will not affect the financial agreement. However, it may help me retain custody. Sherry has proven that I am not important to her life, but she is a good mother, and I don't want to restrict her contact with the children. I just want to retain joint custody so that I can still be an essential part of their lives. I tried my best not to think about our sexual life and feel ashamed when hearing my wife telling her lover that he surpassed me in every aspect. I knew that if I let myself get caught up in this right now, I would start doubting myself, and I couldn't let that happen. At least not at this time. I know it will come later, and when it finally catches up with me, it could devastate me. After completing my checklist, I called Dan's office. He was there and said he would have everything I needed by noon. He also promised to come over to help me set up and ensure I knew how to use everything. I tried to focus on organizing some papers on my desk when my mobile phone rang. I recognized it was Sherry calling, and after 3 rings I answered. Her voice had always warmed my heart, but this time, the warmth was only a prelude to the burning anger that erupted. "Hello, how are you feeling?" she asked in her softest tone. "My stomach is a little upset. I'm concerned about you. You left early this morning before I had a chance to check on you." "Yes, I have a lot on my plate and not much time, so I came in early." Oh, honey, take care of yourself. I don't know what I would do if something happened to you. You know that you, Shelby, and Ryan are my entire life. You express it quite strangely. I thought to myself, but I said to her, yes, I'll be fine. Just get those thoughts out of your head. If you want, tonight I can come up with a way to make everything better. Consider me foolish and blind to the extent that I swallowed your words, every single one. But not anymore. She will get everything that belongs to her. Just wait. Of course, we'll discuss your feelings. Babe, you must feel really bad not to care about receiving what you know is yours, sweetheart. Yes, Sherry, I just have a lot of issues right now. See you tonight. I'll be home by 6. Love. If you need me for anything, just call me. I'll be at the office all day today. That's what I needed to hear. I called Dan, and he said everything was ready. The two of us worked on setting up, placing everything in the right positions, and testing until 3:30. Dan installed software on my home computer and created a secure folder to collect and store everything the cameras and microphones recorded. We checked the living room, kitchen, dining room, and of course, the master bedroom, focusing particularly on that room. 4 cameras were installed there, recording most of what happened. We also installed a camera and microphone in the main bathroom, just in case the couple decided to bathe together. All cameras were motion activated. I was ready. That night was the most challenging night of my life. I couldn't convince myself to play sick again. So after dinner, when the kids were asleep, I obediently followed my wife into the bedroom. It wasn't an act of love. It was merely a physical relationship. I almost entirely lost my composure during the process when my wife said, "Oh, Jack, you make me feel amazing. No one can love me the way you do, darling. Just keep doing this with me forever. No need for cuddling after sex." After the act, I turned to face the other way, pretending to be asleep. Sherry seemed as excited as usual, as we typically embraced after being intimate. She hugged my back, held my hand, and said, "Jack, I'm sorry if I didn't satisfy you." "No, Sherry," I said, "you always satisfy me. Sometimes I just wonder if I'm man enough for you." "Jack, why would you say that? You know you're always mine. My life would end if anything happened to you. As long as I have you, I don't need anyone else. You're my perfect lover, now and forever." "Yes, but sometimes it's hard to believe, Jack. Is there something bothering you? Why are you saying this?" "Nothing, Sherry. I'm just tired." I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Some time later, I heard Sherry crying softly. I didn't feel sorry for her, but I wondered if she was crying out of guilt for what she had done, or because she felt I had once again taken away her dignity. I woke up before her again and took advantage of the opportunity to install a recording device under her car seat. I checked the video and audio from the installed device, making sure that everything we did that night was clearly recorded, even in low-light conditions in our bedroom. When Sherry woke up, she seemed a bit annoyed and mentioned that I had said something hurtful last night, affecting her emotions. Then she kissed me on the cheek, and her mood changed to a cheerful picture. It seemed to be due to her plans for the day with her boss. I poured her a cup of coffee and said I would be busy with work all day. She mentioned that she would spend the day looking at houses and assured me she would be back to pick up Shelby and Ryan after school. I kissed her on the cheek and stepped out through the garage door. But Sherry said, "Jack, you forgot to say that you love me. Honey, you know how important that is to me, right? You have to say it every morning before we start a new day." "I'm sorry, Sherry. I've decided that you should know my feelings for you. But I have a lot on my mind. I apologize to you this time, but a woman needs to hear her man say he loves her. Don't forget that, okay? I promise not to forget. And I'm leaving. Yes, I will tell another woman about how I love her if and when I find someone I can trust enough to dive into love." The information Sherry gave me about being busy all day made me believe that she might spend some time with a man who is truly her true love. I hope that's the case. I'm tired of playing games. I want this whole disaster to end. In the morning, I actually did some work in the office, but I kept an eye on the clock. Finally, at noon, I told the secretary that I would be leaving and put my plan into action. I checked the company car and parked it across from the house, where I waited to see what would happen. Around 1:00 p.m., I saw Sherry's car parked in front of the house. She opened the garage door and parked in her usual spot. As she exited the car and went into the house without opening the garage door, I thought she might be preparing to drive away or waiting for someone. 10 minutes later, a car similar to the one I had seen on the day I discovered them in bed together pulled up to our street and parked in the garage, taking my spot, just like how I lost my place in my wife's bed. I saw him get out of the car, and the garage door closed behind him. I had to admit they were brave to open the garage door in my house, on my bed. It only proved to me that both of them believed they would never be caught, or they agreed that they didn't care whether they were caught or not. Okay, they would soon find out that they were wrong on both counts. They would be caught, and I would make sure they felt very important. Soon, I would have enough visual evidence of their filthy affair. In 13 years, I trusted that my beloved wife would never betray me, just as I never betrayed her. But then, the first suspicions arose. Was he truly better as a lover? Why would she willingly risk destroying our marriage, as well as his marriage? I could have caught them in the act, but oh God, I had done that once, and they didn't even know. There was no reason for me to feel more comfortable if I beat this traitor and had to go to jail for it. Actually, none of them was worth me doing that. My only concern was how this horror would affect my children and his children, as I was ready to destroy him the way he destroyed me. By 2:30 they must have finished as the garage door opened, and the betrayer of my wife reversed his car and left. 15 minutes later, my wife did the same, closing the garage door behind her. I didn't want to waste time watching all the footage from the cameras. I just wanted to make sure that the evidence I needed had been safely stored on my hard drive. After 10 minutes, I had seen enough. It wasn't a complete repetition of the last time they were together, but it was clearly evident. They started in the kitchen, the very place where I was eating, and that scene was even more vivid. They laughed about the number of times they had done this, wondering if I would ever realize that I was eating right where he had slept with her many times after that. Then, they moved into our bedroom. The despicable guy suggested doing it in our daughter's room just for a change of scenery. My wife was furious about this. She told him that he could do this anywhere else. The kids' room would always be off limits. At least she seemed to have some limits, just not when it came to me in our bedroom. They undressed and spent the next 40 minutes in there. I noticed that neither of them had ever said they loved each other, but my wife continued to tell her boss that he was the best lover she had ever had. As a final act, they moved to the plush rug in front of the fireplace in the living room, while he got up, got dressed, and left. She quickly took a shower before leaving the house. I found it odd that she didn't take the time to change the bed sheets, but I thought she might do that when she brought the kids home at 3:30, leaving enough time to clean and ventilate the room, as I rarely returned home before 6. Knowing that the evidence I needed was safely hidden on my hard drive, I shut down the system and left the house, not even caring if the mess was still there in my marital bed. I had seen enough, and even though my heart was hardened towards my wife, I felt an emptiness inside, a pain that quickly turned into anger and resentment. I think I actually laughed, a painful smile in my heart. I was about to lose my mind over these liars. I went back to work and told Dan everything I had seen and heard. Just like me, he couldn't fathom how a passionate wife like Sherry could do such things. She not only broke the sacred vows between us, but also tried to inflict as much pain on me as possible. Meanwhile, she kept letting him know that he was a better lover, a bigger man, the only one who could complete her. Every time I brought this up in our 13-year marriage, she angrily said that it was too disgusting, too unthinkable. These thoughts plunged my soul into a pit of agony and despair, from which I knew I had to rise to complete the mission of destroying both of them. I needed to find a skilled divorce lawyer, and Dan suggested I contact the firm the company was using to see if they could recommend someone. I spoke to one of the corporate lawyers I knew at that company, and he gave me 3 names of divorce lawyers he knew had been successful in defending the rights of husbands. The first person I called was retiring and not taking on new clients, but the second person said he would make time for me tomorrow at 3 p.m. After that, I decided to worry about canceling credit cards, changing beneficiaries, and transferring funds when I got home that evening. Sherry was in the kitchen preparing dinner while the kids were doing their homework in their rooms. She was wearing a summer dress in yellow, looking quite beautiful, and for a moment, I thought my heart was about to soften as she smiled and seemed genuinely happy. I assumed that was her usual evening mood. "Hello, love. How's your day, dear? I hope you had a good day like mine." She said this to me, making my eyebrows raise in surprise. "Your day sounds interesting. Not really good, but I found out some interesting things I didn't know about." "Why do you feel good then?" "I'm sure it's because spending time with the world's best lover makes your day even more wonderful." "I sold a house," she said. "It's the first one this week, but I think there might be another one on Thursday when I go to see a few more houses." "Sure, it's your lucky day," I said to her without much interest. "Anything special today? Meeting interesting or special people?" She looked at me strangely. "No, love, just normal work to get through the day, so I can come home and be with the family. You know where my heart is." While changing, I noticed that the bedsheet had been changed, and the room had been ventilated. There was water on the bathroom floor, and when I returned to the kitchen, I mentioned this to her. "Did you take a shower in the afternoon?" I said, causing her to jump from my words and turn to me with a guilty look. "No, of course not. That's silly. Why would I do that? You don't know, but there's water on the bathroom floor, and it never stays there for more than a few hours." "Oh, maybe the drain is clogged again." "It could be, but I cleaned it a few weeks ago." "Maybe someone is sneaking into our house to meet their lover, and they're showering after having sex," I said this time, making her stand there frozen for a few seconds. She didn't turn back to look at me, just continued facing the kitchen counter, lowered her head, and then resumed chopping vegetables for the salad. "Jack, my Jack, you really have a rich imagination if you can come up with something like that." "Sure, whether it's imagination or the sixth sense, sometimes I feel like I can read others' thoughts. If you could read my thoughts, you'd see how much I love you." She tried to laugh, but the sound of that laughter seemed forced. "You'll be in your office. I'll let you know when dinner is ready." She glanced lightly towards me and seemed somewhat worried. Dinner was quiet, with not much conversation overall. Sherry looked surprised when I sat in her usual spot and asked her to sit in mine. "Jack, you always sit here. Why change it now?" "Oh, just for a change of scenery. Freshen things up a bit, dear." Sherry looked at me strangely, and when she sat down, she didn't eat much, just rearranging the food on her plate more or less. Throughout dinner, the kids talked about their day, but Sherry and I mostly just listened and occasionally expressed appropriate opinions. After we all gathered to help with the dishes, I returned to my office to work on my project. I went through the video clips and selected suitable frames that I could turn into pictures, downloaded them to prepare for large prints on the Epson T3000 printer. Then, I carefully chose the words to accompany the images. All I needed to do was to meet with my lawyer to initiate the divorce process, arrange the finances, and wait for the next visit from my wife and her lover to our home. As I finally went to sleep, Sherry was already asleep, or at least pretending to be. I was pretty sure that my actions in the evening had made her think about something, though this didn't matter much because there was nothing she could do or say to change my decision to divorce her. A deceitful person, and I thought I had made her at least slightly uneasy. Today is Tuesday, and she mentioned that she would have another sale on Thursday, so I considered it a signal that she and her lover would meet on that day. I would catch them on that day. The next morning, I woke up early again, showered, and left before Sherry woke up. I had a lot to do. A meeting with the lawyer scheduled in 3 hours, so I had enough time to handle all financial matters. My first step was to visit the Human Resources Department, where I changed the beneficiary of the 401 insurance from Sherry to Shelby and Ryan. I received some strange looks from the woman assisting me, but I didn't feel the need to explain my actions to anyone. The next step was to cancel all our joint credit cards and get a new one in my name only. Then it was off to the bank, where I transferred half of the money from our joint checking and savings accounts to another bank in my name only. I knew I had to do something about our house, but I trusted that the court would allow Sherry to stay there with the little ones, so I postponed any action on that front until I had a chance to discuss it with my lawyer. At 3 p.m., I met with the lawyer and found him to be quite amiable. He warned me that I could expect her to get custody of Shelby and Ryan, and I would have to split the house and everything else with my wife, even if I had evidence of her infidelity. I told him I wanted him to draft a request, and when he mentioned that I would never get away with taking everything from her, I said not to worry. I was pretty sure I could convince her to agree to anything I wanted. He wasn't happy, but he accepted my requests, saying everything would be ready for her eviction on Friday morning. I also requested him to prepare documents to sue her and the company they co-owned for intentionally destroying my marriage. These papers also had to be ready by Friday morning. I was prepared when I returned home that evening. I was cold towards Sherry. Indeed, I had been through it all. And I just wanted it to end so that I could move on with my life. I knew there was still a lot of pain and sadness ahead, but I knew I couldn't turn back, and no matter what in the end, I would share the pain and suffering with my wife and her lover after a quiet dinner with a few conversations. I retreated to my man cave, printed out the pictures of the lovers I would use, and printed out the captions, doing everything uninterrupted. I also had time to write a letter to Greg Allen's wife, along with some prints of the large photos I had used on the posters, pointing out that I had plenty of videos to provide her if she decided to divorce her husband. Just after 11 p.m., I went to our bedroom to make sure Sherry was asleep, and then went to her car, took the recorder from under the seat, came back, and listened to what was on it. I only listened to one side of the conversation, and it seemed like there were some actual business calls, but there was a call to Greg. "Hello, my love. Thank you so much for today. I feel the same way. I always think of you after we've been together. Yes, oh God, a whole week of time together will be paradise, right? Maybe we should schedule a real estate conference to attend on Thursday. Laugh more, baby. We'll meet again on Thursday evening. I can't wait until then. Goodbye, my love." I was surprised to hear that what she said didn't hurt as much as before. She didn't know that she would become his private property forever in the near future, and of course, the fact that in a day I would destroy their peaceful life brought warm emotions to me. Hatred is a powerful drug. I replaced the tape with a new one and placed the recorder back under the seat, where I hoped it would record evidence of her mistreatment the next day, as her world began to crumble. I could hardly sleep that night, not because I was in pain. I had overcome that, but because I predicted everything that would happen the next day. The last time I woke up early, while Sherry continued to sleep, I stood up and looked at the woman who used to be my love, the mother of my child, the woman I expected to spend the rest of my life with. The feeling of tears welled up in my eyes as I realized that I had slept with her for the last time. Never again would I caress her. Never again would we embrace or talk about the future. We had no future, and as I turned away and walked, I wondered if she knew the price she had to pay when turning her back on me. She might not know, but she would find out soon enough. I showered and left the house, had breakfast at a diner, and then dropped by the company briefly to inform the secretary that I would be absent all day. I called Dan and told him about what was about to happen. He wished me luck, advised me to be careful, and asked me to report the results. I made a quick stop at the lawyer's office to ensure everything was ready for serving my wife and Greg Allen tomorrow. Then I called my wife to say that I would pick up the kids from school. My mother wanted to keep them for an extended holiday, so I would stop by around 3:45 to get their stuff and take everything to my mom's house. My wife thought it was a fantastic idea, and in her sexiest voice, she mentioned that on Saturday we would have time to spend the whole day in bed. Of course, I told her so and hung up. I had reached a point where I no longer wanted to hear her empty words. I didn't rush home. By 12:30, I had parked at the street corner, waiting for the gathering to begin. My car was mostly hidden from view, but I could see any cars turning into my driveway. I didn't need to see garage doors opening and closing. My wife and her lover were easy to predict to the point of predictability. At 12:50 p.m., I saw Sherry's car turn into the driveway, followed by Greg Allen's car 5 minutes later. I should have felt pain knowing that my wife and her boss had engaged in marital bed activities while I stood on the street corner, waiting for them to finish, but it had stopped causing me pain. I couldn't believe my calmness as I imagined all the things I knew they had done together. It was almost like a memory from a low-budget movie with little plot, but a fantastic ending. At 10 minutes before 3 o'clock, I saw Ashel Allen's car leaving the driveway. 10 minutes later, Sherry followed him. As soon as they were gone, I drove into the garage and closed the door. I had a job to do and not much time to complete it. I went to the office and checked the afternoon records. Everything was fine. But this time there was a difference. This time, I didn't care. Once I made sure the video had safely downloaded to the hard drive, I spent the next 2 minutes placing all the explicit porn signs I had made on the staircase and placed them near the front door for convenience. After that, I packed a toothbrush and some belongings for Shelby and Ryan and placed them in my car. The only thing I regretted was causing so much pain to the 2 children I loved more than the world. I was comforted by the fact that I wasn't causing them the pain they would soon experience when they realized their parents were no longer together. No responsibility lay on their shoulders. It was their mother who decided to start a long-term romantic relationship and completely destroy her family. I drove to the school at 3:15 and picked them up. When the bell rang, I told them they would stay with Grandma for the weekend, and since she always made them happy, they were thrilled. 45 minutes later, I dropped them off and returned home to carry out my plan, bringing us back to where we started, with a bed, a table, and a rug on the lawn, along with all the signs, the neighbors watching, and Sherry returning home, horrified to know the truth that I knew everything. I didn't hear anything from Sherry that night, though I thought I would. The police visited me an hour after Sherry left, expressing sympathy but stating that I had to remove the signs and images, or they would fine me for disturbing the peace and being offensive. I took them down. They had done what I wanted. My wife had seen them, and from the look on her face, I realized her life had started to descend into hell. I woke up on Friday morning with a world-class hangover, but even so, I felt strong. Yes, I was sad and lonely, but I knew I had the strength to bury my anger and hatred long enough to get revenge on my unfaithful wife and her foolish lover. Around noon, I pulled back the curtain on the window and noticed that the rug, dining table, and bed were gone. All that remained was the mattress and a set of bedding stained with sexual activity. I thought about dragging them away or burning them later. The rest of the morning passed without incident, but by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everything turned chaotic. I believed that Greg Adams's wife had received the letter and images in the morning, and my lawyer called to inform me that both Sherry and Greg Adams, along with his colleague, had been served at their workplace. He mentioned being present when they were served, describing Sherry screaming and collapsing to the floor, while Greg Adams completely ignored her as he wandered around the office, calling me a deaf mute. He threatened to kill me. However, his associate had locked the office door 15 minutes prior before handing Sherry a final check, telling her that her services were no longer needed. They also gave Greg a check for his share of the company. When he told them he had no intention of selling to them, they cited a section in their company bylaws regarding ethics and sexual relations with employees. The bylaws clearly delegated authority to them to sever all ties with him and his lover. Simultaneously, the receptionist at the front desk informed him that his wife was calling and demanding to speak with him. She had received the letter and images and wanted to assure him not to bother coming home, also informing him that she would file for divorce the next day. I later learned from the husband of one of the women working at the company that after he was escorted out of the building, people turned their backs on my future wife. She lay on the floor for about 30 minutes, screaming and moaning. At some point, she seemed to pull herself up and left the building, but no one was sure where she went. The next day, Sherry finally called me. Her voice sounded dreadful. She wanted to know where the kids were and if they knew anything. I assured her they were safe with my mother, that they didn't know and wouldn't hear any unpleasant details from me. She thanked me for that, and then asked if she could come and retrieve some personal items. Of course I told her she could. All she needed to do was let me know when, and I would leave for a few hours while she gathered what she needed. She wondered if I could stay and talk with her, and I told her I really had nothing to say to her, which made her start crying again. I'm so sorry, you know. You have to know how heartbroken I am, and I never wanted to hurt you. I can't control it. I started laughing genuinely. How could she tell me that she feels sorry for Shelby and never wants to hurt me? What did she think I would do when I found out? Congratulations to both of them. I don't want you to know, I love you, Jack. I've never loved anyone but you. I don't think you truly believe that, Sherry. How could you, after telling your lover that he makes you feel so much better than I ever have, that he's the only one who can complete you? Jack, I've never said such things. How could you think I would ever say such things to him? Because I have a recording of you saying all of that to him, Sherry. Every word, every degrading thing you tried to pin on me in front of him, every demeaning thing you could say about any man, all of it, you told your lover, your own husband. I have nothing to say to you, Sherry, and there's nothing you can say to me that can make any small difference in how I feel about you. I love you, Jack. You have to believe that. I've only ever loved you, no one else. I don't know why I said those things to Greg. You have to believe I didn't mean it. I just wanted to uplift his spirits because he always tells me how disappointed his wife makes him. Let me clarify this. You continuously devalued me in front of him, humiliated me, and exaggerated my failed attempts at intimacy, all to boost his morale and make him stronger. Because you feel sorry for him, right? Is that your story? You feel sorry for him because his wife embarrassed him. So not only do you do the same to me, but you also have sex with him in every way possible for the past 6 months, just to make him feel better. That's right, Jack. I don't want to hurt you. I never meant to. If you don't want to do that, then why did you do it? I'm surprised I took this long to realize how pitiful you are, and I'm ashamed of my blindness. You don't love me, Jack. You haven't abandoned me. It's you who has abandoned me. What you've done to me, and the toxic words you've said about me, repeated for the past 6 months, prove that you don't love me. You can't love someone and want them to endure pain, suffering, and humiliation like that. You think terribly of me, Sherry, cruel and repugnant, and I can't wait for you to leave my life. The only reason I'll have any dealings with you is because of the child. Remember, Shelby and Ryan, the children we created when we were still a family. I want to protect them from as much pain as possible, but I don't want to leave anything for her that isn't pain. What I truly want is for her to feel every bit of the agony she has caused me. Both you and her lover, Greg, deserve this, and I want her to experience it. Why did you tell his wife about this, Jack? This is unfair. This is unfair. Are you out of your mind, Sherry? What you've done to me and our child is what's unfair. What do you think to tell me that I'm unfair to his wife? 1. He destroyed my family by having sex with my wife multiple times. 2. He took the only body on earth that I thought belonged to me and made her tell him about the wonderful things he does and how I'm a pathetic failure. 3. His wife needs to know she's living with a completely useless man. What she does with this information entirely depends on her. He has children, Sherry. So do I. and I want to protect my 2 children. I feel sorry for his children too, but that's not because I'm concerned about them facing a fatherless future. It's his fault. And your fault, Sherry. I refuse to take responsibility. I don't want a divorce, Jack. I will fight for our marriage. There's really nothing to fight for. I'd rather die than be confined with you for the rest of my life. You know you love me, Jack. You can't just end that because of an event like this. God, what are you thinking? Have you read the divorce papers? No. Why don't you listen? If you just listen and let me compensate, there won't be any divorce. If you can't do that for me, at least do it for our 2 children, Shelby and Ryan. They need a mother and a father, Jack. They will forever have a mother and a father. We just won't live under the same roof anymore. If you were too busy to read the divorce petition, you'll see that as long as you agree to joint custody, you can stay in the house and own half of everything we have, from worldly possessions. These are not in the proposal, but what I'm telling you now is that if you don't sign and agree to the much more favorable terms I'm proposing, I will share the video of both of you with everyone you've ever known, including parents, siblings, and our child, and anyone else I can think of. I won't do this, Jack. You can't hate me this much. Oh, that's where you're mistaken, Sherry. I hate, and there's nothing in this world that can stop me. Confront me, and I will destroy your life forever. And yes, Sherry, I can hate you that much. Please, Jack, don't do this. Sign the divorce papers. Sherry, please. Jack, let me make it up to you. No. Sign the papers. Sherry, oh God, please, sign the papers. Sherry and I bowed our heads. Sherry signed the papers, and the divorce was officially finalized within 6 months. She lived with Shelby and Ryan in the house we once shared, while I resided in an apartment a few blocks away. We stayed in the same school district, so there weren't many disruptions in the children's schedules, although the pain from the divorce affected both of them. Shelby told me that her mother admitted to making a big mistake, and our marriage couldn't survive. However, we assured the kids that we would always be there for them. I don't know what Sherry told her parents and sister about the separation, but since they were talking to me, I think she didn't blame it on me. As for my mother, it was just one last chance to retrieve the recording device from Sherry's car, and the sound on the way home was unforgettable. She called Greg and thanked him once again for the wonderful day, but suggested we postpone for a few weeks until she was sure everything was safe. When she arrived home, she was puzzled and wondered why people were standing on our street, looking into our yard. Then, when she saw the signs and pictures and realized what I had done, her cry was almost enough to break the recording device. As she left, she cried and said, "Jack, what have you done? What have you done?" And then I thought reality hit her like a bucket of cold water, and her story changed to, "Oh God, what have I done? No, God, please make everything disappear." She called her lover, and when he answered, she screamed, "He knows, Greg." Jack knew everything about us, and afterward, I just cried for a very long time. It's been a year since the flames of hell engulfed all of us, and I'm slowly starting to piece things back together. I haven't started dating and probably won't for a long time. The thought of repeating what I just went through makes me very cautious about another serious relationship. Shelby told me that her mother went on a date once but came home crying, and according to her, she never dated again. Sherry found a job as a secretary in a nursing home. I never knew whether she stayed in contact with Greg Allen, and I didn't care. Greg Allen and his wife got divorced, and he couldn't find a job, though I didn't send the video of their fun to anyone. Still, Sherry knew I didn't treat Greg well. It seems many companies are afraid of hiring someone with a reputation for being a lover to married women and breaking up marriages. I highlighted Sherry's face in the video, but kept the sound intact. Recently, I heard that Greg's ex-wife is dating a nice guy, a police officer, and their relationship seems to be getting serious. Congratulations to her. Oh, speaking of Greg's former company, to avoid negative publicity, they offered a very generous settlement to avoid being sued. I agreed, And as far as I understand, it's all behind us. I only care about the children and their future. Perhaps someday my future will become important to me as well.